installing Microsoft Teams earlier, but it's good. It's running well.
Can you present your slide, Mr. Joshua?
Sure. Are we using? So the slide will be presented from my side, yeah, on my side, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If there is problem, then we will present from our side.
Sure. Okay. Sounds good. Hold on. Let me see. I can share play. How about now? Can you see?
Yes, we can see a slide.
Okay.
Can you show few slides?
Sure. In fact, I would like to also test out the sound. I'm not sure if it comes out on that side. So this is the second slide. Can you see?
The conservation of wildlife.
Yes, that's the one. And pick one. And then I have the presentation overview, 5 points. This is the first point, and then this is the second. There should be a GIF. This is a moving picture. Can you see it changing?
Yes, we can see it changing.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Next one, point number 2. Second point. How about this one? Can you see this GIF?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's good. Forest loss, habitat degradation, hunting. This is good. It should be okay. This is okay too. 5 constitution. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And okay, this one will be a bit tricky. Is there sound coming out? Can you hear the sound?
I'm not so sure. It's not clear from my side. The committee, can you hear the sound?
If no sound, then it's okay also actually. It's just a very short clip. Yeah.
I think
no sound. No sound, huh?
Yeah. Stop, play, stop, play, stop, play. It's not that smooth, the sounds.
Okay, hold
That's
on.
why I'm here.
What was it? You couldn't see, you couldn't hear the sound, right?
Yeah, no, I can hear.
But what about the, was it playing? Was the movie playing?
Yes, the movie's playing. It's just the sounds not good.
Yeah, but no issue because it's just piano music lah, so it should be fine lah.
Okay.
It's all right. And then this is my conclusion, saying goodbye. But oh yeah, can I ask how many? What's the time? How much time do I have?
Well, based on the tentative that we have sent to you,
it shows about an hour lah. But what about Q&A? And I think Intan or Fatin said there was a quiz and things like that. So just for the presentation, how much time do you think I have?
Wait. 15 minutes plus the it was 1 hour and 5 minutes including Q&A.
I see. Q&A, how long is the Q&A?
We think about 10 to 15 if there is not too long.
Okay. So the previous slides that you saw, that's about 20 minutes. If we have time to spare, so I made an additional.
a bit to our speakers, Dr. Riwan Afendi and Mr. Joshua Bandung, collaborators from Zoo Taiping Wildlife Conservation Society, WCS, and Universitas Katolik Indonesia Ahmad Jaya, Indonesian and committee members of Malaysia Through The Lens, the Wildlife Team Project, as well as the audience. Welcome to our main program for the project, which is the forum with the theme of conservation of wildlife. My name is Ng Sui Siang and I will be the MC for today. On behalf of the committee, we appreciate you taking time off your busy schedules to attend this session today. We hope you will find today's program to be engaging and beneficial for your future. Today's forum is one of our planning activities for this Malaysia Through The Lens, the Wildlife Project. For your information, the main objective for this forum is to create awareness among the public, especially the teenagers, about the wildlife. We are now ready to begin the proceedings of today's forum. I will pass our next section to the moderator, Wana.
Thank you to Ng Sui Siang. Before we start, I will describe a bit about our first speaker, Dr. Muhammad Ridwan Effendi. Dr. Ridwan is one of the Zoo Taiping and Night Safari officer. Not only that, Dr. Ridwan also involved with several organizations such as CISA Animal Welfare and Ethics Sub as the committee member of MASPA, and also member of Nature Educational Society NES. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Muhammad Ridwan to present his topic about the role of zoo in conservation of wildlife. Please welcome.
Thank you very much. So kita just open share screen. Hold on, ya. All right, is it visible on the screen?
Yes, Doctor.
All right. Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone. My name is Dr. Muhammad Ridwan Effendi. I'm the Vet Officer of Taiping Zoo. And today I would like to share a slide regarding the role of zoos in conservation of wildlife. Okay. Okay, what are the rules of zoo in wildlife? What are the rules of zoo in conservation? And first of all, we have to tell you actually what is a zoo. Okay, a zoo is actually a zoological garden where all wild animals are placed in an exhibit, and some of them are also domesticated animals. And this part, which is talking about MASPA, is actually I just wanted to tell everyone that in Malaysia we do have an association, a zoo association, which is we call MASPA, or Malaysian Association of Zoological Parks and Aquaria. And they define zoological parks and aquaria as an inclusive zoo, zoological gardens, biological parks, safari parks, public aquaria, bird parks, reptile parks, insectaria, and other collection of wildlife, primarily for public exhibition. So the main point here is that collections of wildlife, primarily for public exhibition. So that is what we call a zoo is. Okay, and then the history of zoos. This is quite boring, but we have to know the history of our zoos. Okay, zoos started off with domestication of animal 4,500 BC, where pigeons are domesticated in Iraq. And then after that, 2,500 BC, many animals are depicted wearing collars in Egyptian hieroglyphs, and elephants are domesticated in India. But at this moment, there are no animals being kept in captivity. Until then, when the Chinese Emperor called Wenfeng founded the Garden of Intelligence in 1000 BC, and they have started to put animals in a place where it is captive. And then King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylonia had captive animals in their gardens. And then 500 BC, ancient Greeks charged admissions to view peafowl, exotic birds from India. Okay, this is the start of where a zoo start charging public to view animals, which is in ancient Greek period. And then in 2000 280 BC, Ptolemy II developed the Alexandria Zoo. And then continued with the ancient zoo. Romans kept wild animals for spectacle fights, but this is not really a good practice, but this is what maybe 1,000 years ago. And then in the 13th century, Marco Polo views the zoo of Kublai Khan in Asia. And then Philip has a large and famous menagerie in Paris, France in 1333. And then Hernan Cortes views the zoo kept by Montezuma II, the king of Mexican Aztecs in 1519. Okay, that was about ancient zoos, and now it's more on modern zoos, which is the current zoo situation. Okay, in 1752, the Imperial Menagerie of the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna is founded, and it is still open until today. By 1775, there's a Royal Zoological Park in Madrid, Spain, and it's founded. And 1793, Zoological Collection of Jardin des Plantes, Paris has begun. So, and then the first ever zoological society was established in London, which is the Zoological Society of London. And it is a collection of animals in Regent's Park, and we know them as London Zoo now. And then in 1859, the Philadelphia Zoo, the first in the United States, was established. And in 1961, Zoo Taiping, which is the oldest and the first zoo in Malaysia, but at that time, the zoo was called Taman Mergasto Sultan Idris Shah. It wasn't really open for public until 1963. So, and then in 2003, we started the first night safari in Malaysia. All right. So, okay, actually, modern zoos now focus heavily on education and conservation, because education and conservation is one of the two main pillars of the zoo, and they are giving more attention to animal needs, which is animal welfare. And animals are shown in simulation of their natural environment. Like last time, the ancient zoos, they are more like prison where we put them in cages. But now, modern zoos are more open style with the exhibit resembles their wild habitat. And then modern zoos employ biologists and wildlife veterinarians to care and for study for animals. And this is very important because last time it's more like caretakers taking care of animals in prisons, what we call so-called prisons. But now we are more modernized and more systematic, where we have some specialized staff to actually monitor and take care of the animals in the zoo. Okay, this is actually the main 5 objectives of zoos. As we all know, the first one will be conservation, education, research, training, and recreation. So this morning we'll be targeting on the first and the second one, which is conservation and also education. So what is conservation? The real meaning of conservation has been actually developed by WAZA, which is the World Association of Zoological Parks and Aquaria. And it is actually the meaning of conservation is securing population of species in natural habitats for the long term. Okay, this is not just the meaning of the real conservation, but conservation is actually securing the population, as well as we start to actually introduce them back into the wild. That is the real conservation. If we just breed animals in captivity without really introducing them back into the wild, it is just actually defined as breeding of animals. All right, conservation in zoos can be divided into 4 main topics, and this is what we have been discussing in CISA and WAZA standards. The first one will be conservation breeding. Conservation breeding has been done by all zoos all over the world, and it is at that only where we do only breeding, and the animals only, the population increase in captivity only. Okay, and then I will explain later on until the third point. And the second one will be conservation education. And this is also the second point where all zoos have been doing it, but depends on the country itself. Some third world country is not really into conservation education. They are more like actually having animals in captivity and just for like an exhibit to people to actually just to look at the animals. But the modern zoos in other modern countries, we have special modules. Like for example, we have programs that actually help in educating the public, not just by enjoying the view of animals, but also we try to inject into their minds what's the importance and how to appreciate animals in the zoo. And the third one is contribution to conservation. Not many people understand this, but what can we contribute to in conservation? For example, that we do some recycling. Like for example, now plastic is the main issue regarding actually what we call it in terms of conservation. It's like we are protecting the wildlife's habitat, because when a lot of plastic, like just now, I had a sneak peek on his presentation where a dolphin playing with a plastic bag. That is the reason why we put the number 3 points here. Is conservation to conservation is like we actually have to do some contribution on our level to actually help in protecting the animals' habitat and also the welfare of the wild animal itself. Okay, and then the fourth one will be assurance population. Okay, assurance population is that not just numbers on a spreadsheet. We doesn't want animals to be like we're telling people that we are breeding Malayan tigers around 30 heads or 40 or 50 heads. It's not just that, but the most important thing is assurance of viable populations. Viable population means that we have to have good specimens to further contribute to conservation. For example, we must not go into captive inbreeding like most last 50 years ago. We never really thought into inbreeding of animals in the zoo because there's not much animal exchange program and so on and so forth. So assurance of population is not just numbers, but we have to have a very good breeding population that will help us sustain the numbers of animals in the wild with good qualities. All right. And then I would like to share some of the conservation programs at the zoo that we have been doing for the past 30 years. Okay, the first one we would like to highlight is the Malayan tiger, where we actually MASPA together with the Department of Wildlife and Zoo Taiping have been monitoring closely with the population of Malayan tigers, captive also wild. And then one such program is a collaboration for the conservation of Malayan tigers, Panthera jacksoni, where all zoos holding Malayan tigers will be collectively manage this population, meaning that Department of Wildlife together with all the zoos in Malaysia under MASPA will actually try to get a viable data about the tiger. I mean DNA wise, and also the age, and also the originating specimen came from where. So these are all very special and also very important details that we need in terms of doing conservation for this particular species. Okay, and then MASPA also working together with other MASPA members, which is other zoos, for breeding programs to increase the population of certain species, including the Malayan tiger. But as we all know now, the numbers of Malayan tigers are getting lower and lower. It's less than 200 now. So we have to do something now. It's not just all talk but no action, but now is the best time to do some action to actually conserve our jewel of the jungle, which is the Malayan tiger. Okay, and then we have to have self-sustained species and maintain stable population. Stable population is not just enough, we also need some viable population like I mentioned before, because with very bad example or very bad specimen will not really help in conservation, because if they breed, they wouldn't produce any good specimens to actually sustain the species in the wild as well. So genetic backup of the wild population, meaning here that okay, in zoos we do have a lot of Malayan tigers in captivity, but the genetic pool have been shrink with years. So we need new bloodlines. So genetic backup here means that we need new bloodlines to be mixed with our tigers, so that we have a more diversified genetic pool and produce more functional and more viable population of Malayan tigers in Malaysia. All right, the Black Crown Night Heron is another program that has been carried out by Zoo Taiping. It started back in the 90s, where actually there's no Black Crown Night Heron around in Taiping. So we released around 100 birds in the zoo area, and we have thousands of them now in Taiping and also Taiping Gardens, and it has been spreading around all over Taiping. So it's a good thing, because the main idea that we release these birds in our zoo is that because we are planning, in the 90s, we're planning to have a night safari in a zoo. So this Black Crown Night Heron actually a nocturnal species. So we are thinking that why not we put another free-flying species in a zoo, so that our local people knows that we have a night heron in Malaysia. So that was the main idea. So now we have a very viable and a very stable population in Taiping Zoo and spreading around all over Taiping as well now. All right, these are all some of the pictures, and the first picture on the left are those are the nests they have been doing in Taiping Zoo for the past, almost 30 years already. All right. right, the third one will be nice rhinoceros hornbill. Proudly, we have also successfully released a pair of rhinoceros hornbills in 2005. And then the birds have established themselves well and breed regularly every year. These rhinoceros hornbill actually have been flying around Taiping Zoo, Taiping Lake Gardens, and the surrounding hills like the Maxwell Hill and also the Jannah Hills as well, because we have been doing some study, not really study, it's just an observation by our local Taiping birders. We have seen that they are breeding in the Maxwell Hill, and every year they will bring one or two chicks into the zoo to feed. So it's a very beautiful sight, and we are proud to say that this is a very good program for us because rhinoceros hornbill is actually quite an endangered species. And then, as we all know, rhinoceros hornbill is not really found only in Borneo, but we have altogether 13 species in our Peninsula Malaysia as well. Okay, these are some of the pictures of our rhinoceros hornbill, and this is all captured in Taiping Lake Garden and also in our zoo. So the top right picture is actually the male feeding the chick, and the bottom left and the second middle one on the left is actually the picture of the chick. You can see from the cusp is still small, it's not fully developed. So I think now, but this was taken last year. I think by this year the cusp has actually developed a little bit more longer than the one we see in the picture now. All right, this is also another product of Taiping Zoo. First, a brief history of milky stock. Actually, milky stock can be found in Kuala Gula, in one of the places in Taiping, but it is totally extinct in the wild in that area. So then the Department of Wildlife, together with Taiping Zoo and Zoo Negara, we have come up with a decision trying to release a free flying colony in Taiping. So we have actually released them, and they have been breeding very well. All right, on the table on your right, bottom right, you just concentrate on the numbers of the total free ranging, which is 26. Okay, the top ones are all the history that we started release them in 2016. We started off with releasing 14, and then now we have a total of 26 free ranging milky stocks flying around in Taiping Zoo and also Taiping Lake Gardens. So they breed every year. So our plan in Taiping Zoo that, for example, if they actually nest, we have an exhibit of milky stock in our zoo. So if we have like 10 nests and they produce 10 chicks, so we'll take half of it, which is 5 individuals, we'll be releasing it back into the wild. So the other 5 will be remaining in the exhibit. So we'll continue to do that until we have a very stable and viable population around Taiping, and hopefully it will fly off to Kuala Gula back and actually can produce a viable population there. And the best thing about milky stock is that they have a homing behavior, where actually when we started breeding the birds in one area, so the specimen that have been hatched in that area will come back to that area back to actually to breed. So that's the main trick when we do milky stock breeding. That's why our milky stock that have been released into the free ranging area of Taiping Zoo never fly off away from Taiping. They just spend their time near the exhibit, also the lake gardens. Okay, this is one of the pictures that shows the milky stocks. Is in breeding color, which is the bright red and also maroon red of the head and also the legs, showing that they are in breeding season. And those are actually the nests that we have actually provided some sticks with leaves so that they will pick up and just make their own nest in the aviary. Okay, on the left will be the birds nesting on tall trees within the zoo area. And some of the pictures are showing the fledged chicks and the chicks that hatch, and also the free flying flocks in our zoo. Okay, the chicks hatch will be grey in color with a more blackish stripes on the wings. And after they have turned into adult plumage, you can see on the top picture where it says fledged chicks, their colors is almost all white except for some grey streaks and also blacks on their wings. That shows that they're still young. So those are actually how to differentiate the original release 14 specimens and also the fledged chicks. And by the way, we actually ring them so that we have ID on them, so that we know that these are the birds that have been proudly produced by Taiping Zoo. So every milky stock has been released into the free ranging area of the zoo. have their own ID number. Okay, 2021, currently the birds have started breeding, total of 11 nests, and 3 nests have produced chicks, with 1 nest having 2 chicks, which is very visible, you can see. And the nest of the free ranging area is around 10 nests. So far, we have only, up until yesterday, I saw only 4 chicks has been hatched out of 10 nests. So this has been happening every year since 2017, actually. When we started releasing in 2016, the next year in 2017, they started breeding. All right, well, I would like to share you a video of this. Hold on, ya. Dalam ni tak jalan tau. Dalam ni dia tak keluar. Boleh. Okay, this is a video showing that the free ranging flocks flying around in our zoo vicinity. They never venture out far away from the Taiping Lake Gardens. As you all know, Zoo Taiping is part of the Taiping Lake Gardens, so they never venture out from the Lake Gardens. So they just start flying around the zoo. All right. Right, after milky stock, we have another quite rare species, but the numbers are still stable in the wild, which is the red dole. Okay, we have actually we started off with only a pair of red doles, and now we have a current population of 16 individuals. But it takes a long period of time because sometimes in breeding we need to have a very stable population, stable numbers of pairs, so that we can have a stable population. So we actually we got it from Zoo Malacca, and then starting out from that on, it starts to breed every year. And sometimes they are successful, sometimes they are not, because you know Taiping is a very rainy area. We are the wettest place in Malaysia. Sometimes rain contributes to failure of breeding, such as because you know red does they make nests in holes of tree trunks. Sometimes it full with water and mud. Sometimes it kills the young. As you can see, the red dole pups picture on the bottom right, this is actually an example of the nest where they make their nest in a tree trunk, which is below ground level. So sometimes water and mud can get into the nest and can start to kill the young as well. So every year when they start to breed, we will make sure that they nest in a proper area, and we need to change. We never actually disturb the pups, so we just let them be. Because in Taiping Zoo, we believe in letting the animal breed on its own without any human intervention. Because if we decided to do conservation, which is releasing them back into the world, we need the mother and pup bond, or father and pup bonding, so that they know how to survive in the wild. So without human intervention, we'll produce more viable and better specimens to be released into the wild. So this is one of the exhibits, the red does in exhibits. These are the pictures. You can see the colors are like foxes, but they are not really true dogs because they don't bark. And this is the exhibit showing the place where we place the food for them to eat. All right. Another interesting species is the Malayan sorrel, but it is an ongoing project together with the Department of Wildlife and National Parks. It started off in 2016, where there is a location somewhere in, I can't really say where, but I think few of us know where it is. There's been a conflict between human population and also the place where the sorrel roams around. So we, together with the Department of Wildlife, we have started to have a meeting to say that we have to rescue the animals and place it in a zoo where it will be better off than just die off in the area where it's going to be developed by human beings. Because there were cases that some sorrels have been shot in that area. So we had a quick meeting, and straight away we come to a decision to save them. And we have done a lot of visits to the place, and we started off our own traps there. It started off with a soft rope snare, only for young animal, but the first sorrel we ever caught was a young sorrel. That one was just an accidental catch, because we started off with a pitfall trap. and then we start some snares around the area, but we only managed to catch the young. But the young did not survive because without the mother, it can't really survive, because we tried to catch the mother, but to our view, we can never really find the mother back. All right. And then we developed a safe methodology of chemical immobilization and recovery and use a long-acting tranquilizers. This is the most important thing in terms of wildlife capture, and also how to transport them into the quarantine or recovery area, because we have done a lot of study, because there's not a lot of study being done regarding sorrel immobilization. So we at Zoo Taiping have developed a safe methodology, and it's proven very safe, because we have the sorrel now in our zoo, and it's really living healthily. So one of the three methods is the three methods that we use to catch the sorrel is soft snare rope, the pitfall trap, and coral trap. So out of these three, the coral trap is the best way to capture the sorrel safely, and safe for us and also safe for the animal as well. I'll show you some pictures of it. Okay, this is one of the coral traps that we use, where we use heavy metal works. Like actually it's quite a work for us, because it's heavy, but to ensure that the animal is safe into the trap, so this is the best way to catch them. So what we do is we pre-welded some of the rods and the iron back in Taiping Zoo, and we carried out there into the jungle, and then we set it up. So actually, it's a trap where there's a foot trigger. We have two doors on both sides. You can see from here. There's on the leftmost picture, you can see one door in the front, one door at the back, and you can see one black thing on the ground. Actually, that is a step trigger. So the moment the sorrel goes in, step on the step trigger, both doors will be closed, so they will be trapped in a bigger area instead of a small trap, because we want them to be in a medium-sized trap so that they can actually move and really be comfortable before we come and rescue them. Because too small will cause them to bang on the door too much. Too big, it will be difficult for us to dart it from outside. So this is the best way to actually catch the sorrel, and it's proven successful. Okay, this is one of the pictures that we got through the CCTV, through the camera trap that we have placed near and also inside the coral trap. The one in the middle, the bamboo is filled up with salt lick and salt, so that will attract the animal itself. Okay, if you wondered why the door did not go down on the first picture, is that because we haven't started to put the trigger yet. We just wanted it to be comfortable to go in and out of the coral trap. Only then we will set the trigger. So as you can see on the picture on the right, they have become more comfortable. They brought their mate into the cage to lick on the salt. So this is the time when we started to actually set up the trigger to catch them. Okay, usually they go out during dusk or dawn, usually in the wee hours in the morning, around 3 or 4 a.m. So the first sorrel that we caught, it went into the trap around 2 a.m. or 1:30 a.m. in the morning. So we have to rush down from Taiping to also like a few hours to go down there, but the Department of Wildlife have been standing by there for quite some time before we came. And then we walked in the jungle, then we darted the animal, then we carried out. So the moment it was brought into the crate, we start taking blood samples, fecal samples, and fur samples to do some DNA analysis on the samples itself. So it sounds easy, but the work is really tiring, because we have to walk around 1.2 kilometers in an undulating terrain, carrying 72 kilos of animals in a actually what you call a sack to bring it down. So it's killing us, but the moment it reaches the zoo, is a very satisfying feeling for us. All right, future planning. Instead of that, just 6 species just now have been carried out in the zoo. So in the future, we would like to actually do some conservation breeding of the green peafowl. To inform you guys that we have actually 1 male and 2 females of green peafowl now in the zoo. So they are actually in a quarantine period now and separated, because breeding season is off. Because you know, Pavo Meticus is going to be very aggressive during outside breeding season. So green peafowl actually used to be in our jungle roaming freely, but the last green peafowl seen in the wild was in Terengganu. If I'm not mistaken, it was in 1963, and that was the last jungle peafowl seen in the wild in Malaysia. And it's a very sad thing. So Dr. Kevin, together with Department of Wildlife, have decided that we have to actually breed them back and try to release them back into our jungles in the protected area. Because if we release them not in a protected area, it will come instinct back like 1960, like in the 1960s. So now what we do is we're going to breed them, and we're going to establish a viable population in our zoo. Only then we'll be deciding where to release them. But actually, we have visited some of the sites that are actually quite good to be released, which is in Maxwell Hill, because they live in hilliest area, and then we have some area in the Maxwell Hill that is very suitable for them to breed and to be released there. It's a protected area because it's a gazetted jungle, and the management is also under Majlis Peranakan Taiping, as zoo is also under Majlis Peranakan Taiping, so it's easier for us. Okay, other than that, we have also bird conservation site. This is ex situ conservation. Actually, any locations that is under the Taiping Municipal City, we will actually try to get the help from Department of Wildlife to actually protect the area for breeding of certain animals. For in this case, the first location is a site that migratory blue-tailed bee eaters use for roosting. So this site we have been protecting them, and some of the NGOs and so Department of Wildlife always comes to visit this place to actually have a good observation of the birds around there. So the second site is quite close to the first and used for roosting for nesting by some herons and eagles. So there's two sites protected by us and also Department of Wildlife. One is the blue-tailed bee eaters, and one is for the eagles. All right. The reason why we do with this bird conservation site is actually to ensure that resident and migratory birds have suitable habitats to utilize, and it can serve as a study site for researchers, bird watchers, students, and others who can actually also to get knowledge out of these conservation sites. Okay, this is a map showing where is the location. The two sites. First is the conservation site for the blue-tailed bee eaters. It's a wetland plus scrub forest. This is the original picture of it. And then we have put up bird conservation site signage over that place, together with NAS, Taiping, MPT, and also the government of Perak, Department of Wildlife together with UPM, all together helping out to actually conserve this area and protect the species around this conservation site. Okay, some of the things that we can see in the first conservation site is the roosting area of the Baya Weaver, and they're making nests as well. Every year they're breeding over there. And then these are the list of any birds that you can see around, that utilize the site. Actually, there's many more, but this is one that we have been seen and recorded with picture. Altogether, we have 30 species. So one of the these are the pictures of the birds. Blue-tailed bee eater, greater painted snipe, red water lapwing, common sandpiper, and the oriental preticle. This is more regular birds we can see in our gardens and parks. Okay, the second conservation site is for eagles and herons. It's a wetland, also a scrub forest. This is the place where you can see the roosting of the birds. Many individuals are there. It's like Christmas. The tree filled with snow because it's full of cattle eagles. They're white. This is a video of it. The video is taken around 5:30 to 6 p.m. because they're starting to roost off for the night. Okay, this is some of the pictures that are utilizing the area. Little herons, cattle eagles, purple herons, yellow-beaked little eagles, and also the open-bill stock. Okay, this is some wild birds can be seen in Zoo Taipei Night Safari, which is also the Asian open-bill, crested serpent eagle, Brahmini kite, crested goshawk, common kingfisher, and the rare Malayan night heron is coming to be a common visitor in our zoo. And the pied hornbill is a common bird in Taiping, and then the straight-throated wren warbler, and even also the sought after white-rumped shama. Okay, this is some of the birds that can be seen in Taiping Lake Gardens. Recently, there's a family of brown wood owl breeding in Taiping Lake Gardens, very close to the zoo. And also the black-tied falconer is a very common bird, always seen hunting around in Taiping Lake Gardens. And some of the barbets like golden whiskered barbet and the red-throated barbet. And the long-tailed parakeet is a very common and popular bird in Taiping Lake Garden because only in Taiping Lake Gardens you can see the long-tailed parakeet on eye level and very close, and the numbers are very high. So it's quite an attraction to Taiping for people who wanted to see long-tailed parakeet. As we all know, the rhinoceros hornbill also is a very it's a common rock star of our Taiping Lake Garden. Okay, this is also another site you can see just recently in Taiping Lake Gardens. Very big, being raised by the common parrot. As you know, the parent will actually feed them until they are big enough to fly off. So this is a very rare sight, and we are lucky to see them in Taiping Lake Gardens. So this is the latest rock star of Taiping Lake Gardens, where hoopoes actually a regular migratory bird in Taiping, usually in Kuala Gula. We've been seen in Kuala Gula numerous of times, and so in Asam Kumbang. But to this year, it's a very special thing. But they never went back to their own country, but they decided to breed and nest in Taiping Lake Gardens. So the moment we heard the news of this hoopoe breeding in our area, Zoo Taiping together with Department of Wildlife and National Parks and also NEST have decided to actually close down the area to protect from people coming too close to the nest. And we have started some observation and some research on the birds. We stayed there almost like 14 days. Have been taking care of them 24 hours, morning until the coming morning. So all the stuff from MPT, practical students, and also the Taiping bird community and other NGOs like NEST helping us out to gather data, especially on the diet that they are feeding their birds. And we have got the number 16 type of food have been sent to the nest to feed the chicks. And to our surprise, they even sent fish to the females and the chicks to be fed. And so, Alhamdulillah, this pair of hoopoe have produced 3 chicks, and they have already flashed, and they are still staying around in Taiping Zoo and Taiping Lake Gardens, and it seems that they are breeding again. So now the observation has started back. It started off 5 days ago, so we want to see whether they are actually incubating more eggs, and we hope that this bird will be a permanent resident in Taiping Lake Gardens. So this is a video showing the male feeding the female. It's a brief moment, only sending the food, and then he flies off to get food. So actually they are doing, the male or the female will do this like almost 600 or 700 times a day, sending food to the chicks, or the male sending food to the male. It's a very interesting thing to observe, but sadly it was they're breeding during MCO, so not many people can come and actually observe the birds. But it's a plus point for the bird because they can have more privacy to actually breed over there. But Alhamdulillah, we have produced 3 chicks, and we hope we have to get more chicks after this. All right, that will be end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I hope it's not boring. So I'm ready for any questions from you guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ridwan, for the talk just now. Next, we would like to open the floor for inquiries. And I already have several questions from the YouTube live chat box. So the first question is, what are the actions taken to conserve the wildlife?
Sorry?
What are the actions need to be taken to conserve the wildlife?
All right. When we're talking about conservation of wildlife, it actually reflects to our government actually. So the actions that we need to do is, number one, should be gazetting areas where we know there's existing animals is over there. The population studies have to be done. So with study, we can actually appreciate the animals in that site, so that we can actually protect the animals in the site. So the most important thing is like NGOs together with government bodies and the public should share together and fight together to protect certain areas to actually do conservation over there. So the number one thing is that we need to inject in the minds is actually education of the younger generation, and to actually educate them how to actually appreciate this wildlife, because without actually any knowledge or any appreciation towards the wildlife, we will actually, or they will don't care about the wildlife. So the first step will be education, and then the public itself together with NGOs and also government bodies have to be in a same wavelength to actually understand and appreciate and take action in some sort of protecting some sites, and do some new laws regarding breeding of animals, like giving permits to people who like to breed animals, and these people have the passion to breed them, and the department also, and or the Department of Wildlife can actually get the specimens from these passionate breeders to actually increase the numbers of animals in the wild. But they have to list down the species, not actually that we can't just really get our neighbors to breed tigers in the house. So certain species like birds or any insects or any plants, we can get help from these people who are passionate about breeding, and get it from them and increase the population. This is one of the things. And another important action is that we have to actually protect the conservation site by actually stop polluting the place. Like I said, it's not contribution towards conservation is like stop using plastics. You know that all our plastics are ending up in oceans and everything. So animals are start eating up plastics and microplastics and so on and so forth. So this is part of the action that we need to do in terms of conservation of wildlife. It's not just breeding and releasing them to the wild. So we have to play a major part in protecting their habitat as well. I think that will be the answer for that question.
Okay. Then the second question is, what is the cause for the milky stock extinction in the wild?
All right. As we all know, Kuala Gula is a place, is a coastal area, and people and locals over there breeds fish in cages. You know that they put cages in the sea, and then they breed fish over there to be sold to the public. So these milky stocks, you know, with habitat destruction, they don't have any feeding sites anymore. So animals, they can't really think like us. When they see fish in cages, it's like free buffet for them. So they will just come and attack the cages and feed on the fish, and the locals starts killing them actually. They kill them actually for two reasons. One is to protect the fish from getting eaten by the milky stocks, and some report says that they shoot down this milky stock for their own food actually. This is a funny thing because there's a lot of chickens in the market, but they still want to eat milky stock. I don't understand why. So the main reason of extinction over there is by the most dangerous species in the world, which is human beings. They're killing them off actually. And actually now, I think from the last observation and from the info from Department of Wildlife, there's no more milky stocks in Kuala Gula.
Okay. There are someone asked that they say that usually they saw hornbill flying in their school. They asked about, is it okay if they feed the hornbill?
Hornbills in schools, is it?
Yeah.
All right. May I know the location?
I'm not so sure. Probably
Okay,
around.
No problem. To me, the idea of feeding wildlife is not really a good thing, because we don't want to actually develop the dependence of them towards human beings. Because if we start letting them to depend on us, then they don't know how to feed on their own later on. And that's one thing. The second reason is that, are they feeding the right diet for the animals? Sometimes we give them something that is not really good for them, and they just take it out of hunger. That's the point number two. And number three is that if we start feeding the birds or any wildlife, we'll start to build up more conflicts actually. For example, if we start feeding wild macaques, wild pigstown macaques, they will actually eventually will come and attack us because they know that we are actually a food source for them. So they depend on us, which is not good, and to me, it will be a very bad future for them. So if you ask me, it is not okay, But just to show to people about the birds, just actually observe them is better than just than feeding them. So I'm afraid that they'll just give them the wrong diet. That's my biggest concern. So if you ask me, it's not a good idea.
Okay. Next question is how you guys the staff ring the wild milky stalks. Aren't they scared of human?
The question is, are they not afraid of human beings? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it
The milky stalks in our zoo is really actually they're scared of our own staff, but they're actually comfortable with the presence of human beings. But you know, animals have their own safe distance. When we come too close, it's either flight or fight. So they have these special distances. So I think there's no problem releasing our captive milky stalks out because it has shown proof that they continue to breed even with human presence around it. As long as there's a safe distance, that should be fine. Actually, our milky stalks never come and feed from our hand actually, so we have to feed them in a proper area. When we are off, only then they'll come back and feed. That is the kind of behavior that we want from them actually. They're comfortable with human beings around them, but not too close. Okay.
okay? Next question: is there any other way that we can support or contribute to the conservation activity in Zoo Taiping other than visit the zoo?
All right. Actually malu sikit nak cakap. Like other zoos, you know, any breeding programs, any conservation programs is always about financial. So actually we have a sound financial condition, but to improve more in terms of management and also conservation programs, financially people can actually help the zoo. Because now visiting the zoo is impossible with all the pandemics in itself. So contributions and donations from the public or any associations or NGOs and government will be a big help for us in terms of our programs in conservation actually. So I think that will be big help for the time being with the pandemic.
Okay. Also, there's someone asking if is it okay if they want to adopt one of the animal in the Zoo Taiping?
Yes, it is okay. We have an adoption program. They can Google up in our Facebook. In our Facebook, there's a ranges of prices showing that for this species, how much you can give to us to adopt this animal for a year, some things like that. So it's okay actually, and there are programs like that. I think in most zoos in Malaysia and all over the world they have these adoption programs.
Okay. The last question is there some species animal that quite hard to get used into new environment? If is, what is the technique or strategy to counter the situation?
All right, this is a very good question in terms of conservation. Okay, as we all, okay, I'll try to relate this with the serau that we captured in the jungles in Malaysia. First of all, we must have the proper place with a good size, with the proper needs of the animal. For example, serau, we know that they are very elusive and very quiet, and they are very sensitive animals. So we have to prepare a dark room for them. Not totally dark, but actually there's no things that you can see outside. And so this is what we call conditioning rooms. So animals needs to be conditioned before releasing it into an exhibit or releasing it into another space. So first we have to study the condition of the place where we can keep them, the diet that they feed in the wild. So in the serau case, we brought some of the natural foods from the site and we brought it back and planted it in our zoo so that we know what kind of source or what kind of food they need. And that's one reason. So one of the things that we do, to me, the most important thing is we have to study the biology of the animal itself. So the conditioning period, it can go from 2 weeks to actually 6 months of conditioning, depends on how aggressive the animal it is. So in our case of the serau, it took us like almost 3 months of conditioning. Only then they are used to human beings at a safe distance. because the surau is used to human beings, but not too close. But when it comes to the zoo, it has to be so closer because we have to come and feed them and wash the night source and everything. So it took the 3 months of conditioning. Any animals needs conditioning is how we actually come close to them, how we approach them, and actually the main thing is we have to study the biology of animals. And conditioning is very, very important for any species, birds, reptiles, mammals, anything. They need to do conditioning. Depends on the species and according to time actually.
Alright, thank you for answering the question.
I have another question. How will any extinctions of the species affect the ecosystem?
Sorry, can you speak a little bit louder?
How will any species of just what you mentioned just now affect the ecosystem? I mean the extinction of the species.
Okay, you mean the species that we bred in our zoo, is it?
Yes.
The milky storks, the black crowned herons, everything, is it?
Yes.
All right. To me, it doesn't really affect the ecosystem because we have a stable population. Because how do we control them is through by feed, macam the black crowned heron. You know, the main trick of breeding animals is food. So sometimes we have to ration the food so that they know that okay, there's not enough food, they will stop breeding, and this is kind of a study. But to me, when we release the the black crowned heron, it doesn't affect any ecosystem around the zoo area. So far, it has been good, and I think there's no problem as long as we control the food, because the main idea of breeding is the food. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, before we start, before we move to the next one, is there any other committee in the MS team want to ask questions? One, two, three. Okay. Then thank you for all the questions. Now we'll proceed with our next speaker, which is Mr. Joshua Pandu. Thank you, Dr. Ridwan, for the speech just now. Okay. Before we start with Mr. Joshua, I will introduce him a bit. So Mr. Joshua Pandu has 15 plus years of experience working with the Wildlife Conservation Society, WCS Malaysia. He is currently the team leader for the Orang-Utan Unit. His role includes coordinating a team of researchers studying population and distribution of orang-utan in Sarawak. This goes together with conservation education for communities and schools around the study site and urban areas. He completed his master from the University of Adelaide, Australia in 2019. He loved the outdoors and is rediscovering film photography recently. Now, I would like to welcome Mr. Joshua Pandu with the topic Conservation of Wildlife. Please welcome.
Thank you, Intan, and also our MC, Mr. Sri Siang Eng. So thank you very much, Dr. Ridwan. It was such a joy to see photos of all the biodiversity that's in Zoo Taiping, and hearing from all the responses to the questions earlier. Quite proud to share this platform with you today. Very honored. Oh yes, let me share my screen for a while. Give me a sec. Okay, so I work for the Wildlife Conservation Society, and the topic that I'll be sharing today is called the Conservation of Wildlife, Malaysia Through the Lens, the Wildlife presentation for University Technology Petronas. And with that, I would like to say thank you to the organizers, Intan, Fatin, and the team for inviting us to share a bit about our experience to conserve wildlife with specific narrow it down to orangutans. And I cannot keep up with Dr. Rizwan's photos earlier with all the nice photos of birds. and all the wildlife there. I don't have orangutan with me, but I do have Lucy with me. This is Lucy, our mascot for, if you can see the bottom screen here, this is Lucy who accompanies us in our webinars recently because due to COVID-19 restriction, we can't really travel to do our events in school with communities or even exhibitions. So Lucy is happy to join us today. So a bit about myself, my name is Joshua Pandong and I work for the Wildlife Conservation Society or WCS. Thanks to Intan earlier for the quick introduction. I have been working with the NGOs since 2005, right after graduating from University Malaysia Sarawak, UNIMAS, and I've been working here since. Oops, sorry. I have 5 major points. This is the overview of each point that I will present later. And also towards the end, I'll probably have a quick bonus section on our organization, WCS, as well as on orangutan itself, in order to meet the objective of today's topic on conserving wildlife. So I'll go straight to the point of conserving wildlife by asking the question, number 1, why is conserving wildlife important? Number 2, nature, wildlife, and us connected. Number 3, I ask, what is threatening our wildlife? And 4th, how does WCS conserve wildlife? And lastly, how do we respond together? Because today, as part of our objective, we would like to find out what are the ways that we can respond to these threats that are threatening our wildlife. In particularly, I will talk about the threats to orangutans. So I'll go first to my first point. Why is conserving wildlife important? And those who are have a soft spot like myself for orangutans, you can see that a lot of headlines, not just this is the recent ones that I took, but orangutans have been on a decline since over 100 years ago. That was when Charles Darwin, when he presented his theory of origin of species, people were intrigued about seeing this connection between great apes like orangutan with humans. So they have been hunted down for either specimen collection or other trophies. And basically at the moment, land development for agriculture or expansion of places will be their main threat, because we compete with the land use. So orangutans are in danger of becoming extinct. This is very important because the theme of my sharing today would be the connectivity, how environment, wildlife, and human are connected. I'll use the theme of body, like how our body parts, if one finger or a toe is in pain, like I've been having this ear infection for the past few days, the whole body suffers. Just one part of the body, just one body part is in pain, the whole body suffers. So the same thing with wildlife. If we lose orangutan, if they're gone extinct, we can never get them back. And we lose, they have ecological functions, which I will share towards the bonus section later on about what are the orangutans' ecological functions and how they are important culturally. This on the left over here is a GIF of the disappearing forest cover for orangutan habitat, a comparison between 1973 to 2010. So basically, resources are limited. This is the whole island of Borneo. The definition of economy shows that resources are limited, but human desire for goods is unlimited. That's actually, you will one day deplete the resources if they are not managed carefully. So that's part of the reason why we need to manage or conserve wildlife, because in the definition of economy, we sacrifice something we value to get something else. So are we willing to sacrifice orangutan up to the point of their extinction just for to fulfill our own desire, or is there a balance that we can find? So that's the theme or the direction that we want to go in the sharing today. Number 2, I asked the question, nature, wildlife, and us connected. How are we connected? So on the left here is live animal market, where they actually buy and sell wildlife. So as we all know, we are all suffering today because of this COVID-19 pandemic, and it originated in wildlife sold illegally in live animal markets. Those who follow this history from last year, it started from Wuhan, China, and it spread all across the world. So we are so connected with each other that when these viruses they jump from wildlife hosts into human population. So initially it was they say it was pangolin, and then at the market in live animal markets in Wuhan, it jumped and started to spread around wildfire across the world. So you can see that how nature was the one who was able to contain the coronaviruses within the wildlife population. If they exist inside the wildlife for point, then they didn't have to jump to human population. But because of live animal market, having all this wildlife together in one place is just a breeding ground for viruses, and even more, the third point here, more lethal viruses if consumption persists. So at WCS, well, internationally, not locally, we also have a unit that focuses on emerging zoonotic diseases. So we are trying to find to prevent actually even more lethal viruses in the future. So we have to take action today. If not, then we will suffer greatly in time to come. So as mentioned earlier, using the analogy of body, the healthy people, healthy environment, and healthy animals are all interconnected. Like a body, when one part suffers, the whole body suffers. For example, my small toe at my feet, I'm very clumsy. So whenever I bump into things, that's the first body part that will knock on something, and the whole body like jump up and down and in pain. Sometimes I ask myself, do I really need this small toe? What if I cut it off? Big mistake if I do that. Why? Because that small toe is actually what controls the stability of the body. So likewise, if we lose one of the animals or parts of the nature or even forests, we all suffer. We may think that, oh, orangutans are in the jungle, they're not, why should I care? I don't have any encounter with orangutan, why should I care? But actually they have a function in the environment. We need to keep them there. We need to care for the vulnerable, yeah? And we need to do this together. I'll show you why later. What is threatening our orangutan? So I'm coming to the third question. The GIF over here shows an orangutan being, they're actually trying to rescue the orangutan. So what happened was there was this attempt to rescue an orangutan. It was stranded after a section of the forest was burned down to make way for an oil palm estate in East Kalimantan. So the men over here, instead of saying that to harm it, they were trying to tranquilize the orangutan using blow darts. But again, this is a very painful video to watch actually, because they are losing their homes. Why? Because of development, and to develop an area, you need to cut down the forest. So what happens when a forest is lost? So food sources are destroyed. And this is not just for the orangutan, but also for the other wildlife that depend on fruits as their main diet. Orangutans are displaced from their homes, as we saw in the GIF earlier, and they move towards non-suitable habitats. So meaning they're not they're not functioning according to their purpose ecologically speaking. So forest loss earlier means trees are being cut down. Habitat degradation here refers to original forests are no longer there because plantations such as oil palm estate expands into the homes of orangutans, and surrounding them cause fragmentation. So forests now exist in patches, so like pockets of forest, like an island surrounded by these estates. In the picture here, we see the forest patches are disconnected from other forest patches by the expanding oil palm plantation. And if you can see, it's as far as the eye can see. Thirdly, hunting. So this greatly reduced the population of orangutan. If one or two orangutan are being killed, especially if they are adults, it takes so long for them to recover because an orangutan, well, it shares 97% of our human DNA. That will also means that they share this similar characteristic of needing for orangutan mother. They pregnant for about 8 to 9 months, similar to humans, but they don't breed every year. They have to train up the baby orangutan up to about 8 years, teaching them how to find food, teaching them how to even climb trees, to identify the different fruiting seasons around in an area. So that take about 8+ years, and they will only breed like once the baby or infant orangutan are independent, then they are pregnant again and have more babies. But that would mean if their lifetime is about 35 years, then that will just be about 1 to 3 baby per orangutan mother. So they breed very slowly. They are one of the slowest, if not the slowest, breeding mammal on Earth. Killing 1 or 2 orangutans today will just, the projection of their decline just goes down, and they can go extinct within less than 100 years. And even for the ones in Batang Tapanuli in Sumatra, where there is only about 500 orangutans left in that area, they project if the way things are going, then it is just within decades they will lose the orangutans there. So how does WCS conserve wildlife? So this is what we do. Our team of researchers conduct extensive research, and currently we have an ongoing orangutan nest count surveys to estimate the number of orangutans in the wild. So earlier we saw Dr. Ridwan sharing about free-ranging wildlife. So this one will be really in the wild, and our work includes mapping their distribution in Sarawak. And just a quick info to date, we estimate there are about 1,984 orangutans of viable population, meaning they can survive successfully. So about 1,984, about 2,000 orangutans. There is an extremely small remnant needs leftover orangutan population in Sedilu, Sebuyau, Lesong landscape. I'll show you another map shortly. And then we also have places where there are we consider them as historical ranges, meaning they were there but not been seen for more than 20 years. I'll show you the map later. And our field sites where we study orangutans are small compared to the island of Borneo, but over the last century, we have seen more than 75% decline in orangutan habitats. Most were lost due to expansion of land development for economic reasons, as I showed earlier. So what else do we do? So WCS, we train defenders to protect homes of orangutan. So this means, for example, in this photo is a workshop with local communities called Community-Led Joint Patrol Training Workshop. So the communities are trained to be eyes and ears on the ground to report back if there's any illegal activities going on in their areas, meaning the communities that we train to be defenders are located around or in and around orangutan habitats. What else do? We partner with everyone to save wildlife together. Be it primary school student, like in the photos that you see on your right here, top right, is a participatory photography event that we organize with SFC and SK Nangadelo, where we pass digital cameras to school kids, and they took photos. Really, I would say professional photos. Some for those the winners, they really take great photos. So we underestimated the kids. They really produce creative stuff if we give them the opportunity. So playing your part does not only mean that you have to travel into the jungle to look for orangutans like what we are doing. It can be simple as using your talents in photography, yeah, or arts and drama, like the one at the bottom or in the middle, where school kids, we conducted an orangutan drama contest, and the school kids just, I think this was Sekolah Menengah, secondary school, who produced the props that were used in drama that we brought into the longhouses around orangutan habitat. Longhouses that are located around orangutan habitat. So you can even use arts or drama, or even speaking English to raise awareness about the importance of orangutans and other wildlife, and being nature's defenders using whatever talents you have. So let's do that together, yeah? Let's partner with everyone to save wildlife together. Okay, so I have 5 calls to action. Dream big. So this one, I would say I dedicate this first call to action to the final year student, especially those who are doing this webinar as your university assignment. Perhaps you have been thinking about what do I do after I finish university. So instead of waiting for that time to arrive, you start by dreaming first. Meaning once you plan out, okay, this is what I want to do, then you pursue that dream and keep it alive. Because they used to say the youth is the leaders of tomorrow, but I would say youth trained to be leaders are the leaders of tomorrow. So we need you to have this dream and of what can you do, whether it is for conservation or even in the line of what you're pursuing your degree on. Start planning what you want to do and don't give up. Yeah, keep your dreams alive. Speak for Wildlife, like what we are doing today. I'm telling you a bit about my story. I have a bonus section later which I'll share further. Speak for Wildlife, tell your story, not just to your friends, but also to your families, because when we, what does wildlife or their homes mean to you? So when you share a personal story, that would be affect your or influence your friends more, yeah. And then gain great ideas, learn new skills, and apply them to save wildlife. Because what I believe that we are all unique. We all have unique personality, skills, talents, and interests. So use them and apply them to save wildlife. Live a green lifestyle and support those who do as well. So you do this together like a community lah. So the last one, I keep the best for last. Enjoy the outdoors, be thankful, and appreciate nature. Unfortunately, maybe because I think last night there was announcement that we will have another set of lockdown season. It's hard to enjoy the outdoors, but I hope that you can find the opportunity to enjoy, because once you have this sense of awe, for example, you go to a waterfall or you go to a beach where you see the waves, you feel that, wow, a sense of peace. And when you see it in the opposite situation where it is polluted, where it is cut down, you feel that, hey, I have to do something. So that's how you translate your sense of awe and appreciation for nature into action. But first, you need to go and experience it for yourself. Finally, actually, this is the fifth question. I have a bonus section later. A quick question for those who can type in the chat, whether you're on Microsoft Teams or YouTube. What can a gorilla do with an iPad if given one? Some say maybe you can take a selfie. Can a gorilla take a selfie? Maybe. Can it play apps or Candy Crush, or what's the latest game people play these days? Even the one on the right shows that it is using an iPad on reverse. What can a gorilla do with an iPad if given one? So type in your responses. I'll come back to that later. Second question, what can a dolphin do with a plastic bag if given one? So let's watch this together. Quick one. Sorry, I don't think you can hear the music earlier, but it was just piano music at the background. But let's come back to the two questions. What can gorilla do with an iPad? Basically, maybe not web development or app development, definitely not. What can a dolphin do with a plastic bag? If given one, they can't do anything with it. So why do I ask these two questions? Do we know that humans are the only beings blessed with the ability to choose? Let's learn from yesterday to make wise choices today. So basically, animals cannot make choices. Gorilla cannot make choices that I want to use Shopee or Lazada to purchase latest items on the market. McDonald's, BTS packages, for example, they can't make that choice. Dolphins can't choose not to use plastic bag. It's just react by instinct. It looks like maybe it looks like a jellyfish, for example. Turtle videos, if you Google and look at how one of the green turtle with a straw stuck in the nose, bleeding, they can't make choice. Did you know that? They can only react. Only human beings are blessed with the ability to choose. So let's make wise choices today by learning all that we can, and we make wise choices together. So I'll move on to the bonus section. I'll share a bit about the great apes. So those who are familiar with Planet of the Apes, then you'll know Caesar, Maurice, I can't remember all their names, but these are the chimpanzee, orangutan, bonobo, and gorilla. So you only have 4 great apes. Who is WCS? Where are we? So we have about 14 global regions around the world. We are headquartered in New York with that small green dot in New York in the United States. We are at Southeast Asian Archipelago, where there's that orangutan photo just pop up. So we work regionally. So what do? We stand for wildlife. We conserve the world's largest wild places, discover how to save nature, inspire everyone to work together, and we protect wildlife in wild places. So in Malaysia, over here, I zoom in into four distinct species or groups of wildlife that we work on. On the second photo, tigers and elephants, that's where we work at Endarompin landscape in Peninsular Malaysia, Johor and Pahang. And in Sarawak here, we have the orangutans and sharks and ray conservation. So these are the work that we do here at WCS in Malaysia. And I'm zooming in into where are the great apes found. So earlier you saw this photo. And gorillas, we have two species, western and eastern. And then chimpanzee, we have two species, the common and bonobo. Orangutans, we have three species. So the third one is, so we have Bornean, Sumatran, and the third one, Tapanuli, that was discovered, I think, back in 2017. And then they are only occurring in that green and red boxes. These are the regions with great apes. No other places in the world. So we can count ourselves very privileged. So where are the orangutans found? Again, this is pushed back to about 90 years back. Earlier you saw that GIF of comparison between 1973 and 2010. So this is happening between 1930 to 2013. Whereby you can see that 75% of orangutan habitat has been lost over that period of time. So it's a huge loss. So for those who are from Sarawak, so these are the areas that we study orangutans. On the far right, you have that big chunk of area called Batang Air Lanjang Intimau. These are where the the core orangutan habitats are found. The green and pink refers to the green are protected areas, meaning they are protected under legal protection status, for example, a national park or wildlife sanctuary. The pink ones are not. They are not protected. They are either a community area or a concession. So that's the far right. And then in the middle there, there's a chunk of, not a chunk, but a fragmented forest landscape called Sedilu Sebuyau Lesong landscape. This is where the remnant orangutans are found. And lastly, you have that bordering Sarawak and Kalimantan borders. Those are the areas where they used to range, orangutan used to range there, but have not been seen in more than 20 years. A quick Q&A about orangutans. What do we know about them so far? I mentioned earlier about pregnancy is between 8 to 9 months. So they carry their baby as long as a human mother. One baby is born in each birth. There are reported twins in the wild, but again, survival of the fetus, normally only one will survive. Next pregnancy is about 8 years later. Age of first pregnancy is between 11 to 15 years. So this means that like a teenager, that's the time that they are sexually mature and can be pregnant. So it takes a long time for them to be being mature enough to reproduce. And their life cycle is only, they live up to 30 to 30 years. They tend to live alone, although there are social groups, but that is within territory. For example, an alpha male with several harem of wives. So they move large distances, even up to 8 kilometers square. That's the habitat range per orangutan. They do not have territories, yes, because they do travel long distances. Only males with chick pads are called alpha male. Not all males will have chick pads. Those who do will fight for the alpha status. So DNA 97% shared with humans. And why are orangutans important? Firstly, they are the gardener of the jungle. They disperse large seeds like durian and all these seeds, and because they travel large distances, so they drop the seeds and it grow in the areas that they travel in. So they are a gardener. They are also a doctor. They maintain a healthy forest. Over here on the right, you see an orangutan mother. The branch that they are holding is about the size of arm. They can just with a mighty pull just break down the branches. So why is that important? Because in a dense rainforest where there is hardly light penetrates to the ground, so orangutans are the ones who maintain that health by breaking all the branches, and you have the sunlight coming down and new shoots can come up at the forest floor. They are engineers because they build nests every day. I think I showed you a picture of orangutan mother and infant earlier on a nest. They build that every day. And if it is a fresh nest, I've seen one. If it is a fresh nest, if you stand under it, it's waterproof basically. So they are brilliant. They are opera singer. They make long calls. Sorry, this is alpha male make long calls because they have this throat sac. And there's a paper that says that the long calls is like a Twitter for in the animal in the orangutan kingdom, because it shows where they are traveling. They are going to travel in the next few days. For example, if I make a long call, or sorry, an alpha male make a long call in that direction, so he'll be going there in the next few days. So wildlife over there will get ready. Long calls, if you can Google this sound, do I need to make a sound? Maybe I'll just mimic. I'm not an alpha male, but a long call by an orangutan sounds like this. Something like that in the jungle. Yeah, and if they sound from the valley, it's just boom across the landscape. It's just filled with awe when you hear that live. So they're an opera singer. And lastly, they are also culturally important. Legend has it that orangutans saved ibans from extinction before, because at that time the ibans, how they deliver baby inside pregnant mothers, they just cut up and get the baby. So most of the moms will die from that process until an orangutan or a couple of orangutans taught the ibans how to deliver naturally by using ginger, and you rub the belly of the pregnant mom and you can safely deliver the babies. So they saved the ibans from extinction once. Today it is our turn to work to save the orangutans from extinction. So the roles have reversed. Yeah. With that, I'll end with this. We stand for wildlife, and I'm contactable using that email. And do follow our Facebook and Instagram account, DWCS Malaysia. So thank you very much. Over to Intan and MC Ng. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Joshua. So now we move to our next session, which is Q&A session. So there are several questions we received from YouTube chat box. So the first question goes, in what condition will animal be categorized as endangered species?
Can you hear me? So it will be the number of left in the wild. Like orangutans, they are the Bornean northwest orangutan, which is the one that we have here in Sarawak. Species name is called Pongo pygmaeus pygmaeus. The number if we combine with the West Kalimantan ones, are less than 3,500, and it's going down. So that category is called critically endangered. The one that I mentioned about Batang Tapanuli orangutans, whereby it is like 500 orangutans, those are really close, very close to extinction already. So the status or the different levels of endangered, red, what they call a red list of threatened animals, is depend on how many there are out there in the wild. It doesn't count in captivity.
Okay. Next question is how WCS find creative ways to cope with COVID-19 pandemic in conserving the wildlife.
Yep. So what we've done previously, we had okay. Let me go back a bit. WCS is actually a research-based organization, meaning we conduct research on the ground, we collect data, we analyze data, we come up with recommendations to how to conserve the wildlife. We are not actually a membership-based organization whereby the public can be a member and then they can donate. We are quite a different entity altogether. So basically, we apply for grants. Grants are project-based, so it's a different project, different grants. So we run it like that. At the moment, previously 3 years running before COVID, we had a component called communications where we actually reach out to the public. We had Run for the Wild. I think we managed up to 6 years. We had Ride for the Wild. We had a bicycle event. We had exhibition. We had schools, microfiction challenge. We have all sorts of trying to reach out to the urban public. So there's two different communities here. First is local communities where they are the rural people communities who are around the orangutan habitat. As mentioned earlier, we train them to be defenders, meaning eyes and ears. Those that reach out in the urban setting, like schools, like universities, the public, the voice that support. Because when you have a lot of people, especially in social media, having what do you call that, a movement towards conservation, we get noticed. You see, so at the moment, so previously we gained a lot of support through all these events, but lately we have turned to virtual volunteerism instead, or digital volunteerism, because due to COVID-19 we can't really have a face-to-face with people. So we do adapt, and we use the online platform made available to us. We do hope that COVID-19 will settle down soon, so we can see each other face to face, and we will have passed Lucy around, so you all have a touch and feel, hey, at least a model of an orangutan. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is there any breeding program for orangutan?
So we study. We function quite different from zoos, like how Dr. Rizwan mentioned, and also what we call a wildlife center here in Kuching, whereby they have that rehabilitation program. They have this where a baby orangutan is brought up in primary school, secondary school. They teach them a lot of skills to survive in the wild before they're being released. Our work is mainly, that's the work that I mentioned earlier, is done by Sarawak Forestry Corporation. The work that WCS does is mainly to study the orangutans from a distance, so we don't have any physical contact with the animals.
Okay, just now you show us like several people like kill orangutan, etc. So what is the purpose of them kill the orangutan? Is for selling their organ or anything else?
Yeah, so I think I can think of two reasons. First is orangutan sits on top of the law, meaning if an orangutan is found in an area, that area cannot be disturbed. So people view that orangutan is a threat to their either agriculture development or expansion. So in East Kalimantan, where you saw that video earlier, that was an area where previously there were orangutans there, but because of agriculture development, forest fires and all, they had to be translocated out of their own homes. So that conflict is caused by conflict of land use for agriculture. The other one that you mentioned about trophies, that will be part of the reason as well. I'll show you about the skull earlier with all the carvings. Those are actually, well, I've not seen them firsthand, but I know my former colleagues had. Those are considered trophies and a rare item lah. But again, of course, it is illegal to possess that.
Okay, let's say when we're doing the jungle trekking or other activity in forest, what should we do if we accidentally meet the endangered species like orangutan?
All right, I love that question. Thank you to the person who asked. I would firstly recommend you need to walk in a group. And don't walk on your own. So if you do have to walk on your own in jungle trek, make sure you have the necessary equipment to deter. I can speak for my colleague in in Johor, whereby I joined a training once before, where the team is going into a tiger-prone area. There are tiger. You hear their roars there, so they need to bring in flares. Because if they have an encounter with a tiger, if it does attack you, they have this flare that they're poking next to the leher, and then it will just run off. Now, hopefully, so far no incident. But for an orangutan, normally they are up on the trees, and they tend to have this territorial behavior of breaking branches, and then they aim at you, and then they throw down, and then that's about it. Like, actually, they don't pose such a threat unless I've heard of stories where it did come down and then fight off dogs that the community was bringing, but I think it was out of self-defense. Normally, if you walk in a group, if you see orangutans, they're normally up on the trees. Just carry on your way. And then if you do have an encounter, so coming back to the tiger story, if you do encounter a tiger right in front of you, normally we bring a backpack. So we take a backpack out of our shoulders, put it down, and then slowly walk backwards. And then the tiger will be more interested in the back than you, because we're not food to them. Stand on your feet instead of crouching. Stand on your feet because an animal with 2 feet does not look like food to the wildlife. So be confident with yourself, and then walk away. You should be able to survive the encounter.
Okay. Next question: is there any cooperation between the Sarawak and Indonesia side in conserving the orangutan?
We did once. We had that in Kuching. I can't remember traveling to, well, maybe our colleagues, our counterparts from other government agencies have that working together collaboration. But I remember in 2009 they came over, and then we come up with a transboundary conservation area orangutan strategic action plan. It was a 10-year thing, 2010 to 2020, where we find a common ground that we can work together on to conserve the orangutans, because orangutan does not have passport. They don't know any country boundaries, so they just in and out. So it is us that need to come together and find ways that we can conserve it together. So yes, we do have collaboration with our neighbor, Indonesian side. Even WCS, we have WCS Indonesia as well. So we work together on those issues.
Okay, next question about the teenage orangutan. Is there have their rebellious stage as what human teenagers have?
That's where the discipline, or well, I wouldn't say, okay, like you said, how they are similar to humans, yes. Orangutans also have their own personality. You do see them if you follow a documentary called Orangutan Island. They rescue baby orangutans because their mothers were killed. Even as simple as climbing trees, they just put the orangutans on the tree and then it just fell. It didn't know how to swing from one branch to another. All that skills have to be learned, and then you do have those who do not have like a dedicated mother to look after them. They will be rebellious as well, for sure, like our teenagers as well, because they do have different personalities. Yes, that's right.
Okay, and next question is, how would you predict the life of orangutan for the next 10 years given the level of seriousness of the action taken to save them today?
I'm quite proud to say that the Sarawak government has made the orangutan a priority species to protect in the next 10 years. As the person who asked, that's your concern. And even areas with orangutans, non-protected areas, I would say, because orangutans, again, they do not know boundaries between whether it's a national park or it's a community land. Where there's food, they travel because they're in search of food. So areas that are not protected, what are the strategies that we need to take in order to find a coexistence between the community, orangutans, and also for us who are not there in the community? Because normally local community or villagers would say, hey, there's an orangutan at our own backyard here that took my fruits the other day. So what are you going to do about it? So on our side, that's where we cannot work alone. WCS work together, partner together with different agencies, even including Borneo Adventure, one of our partner, and also a tour operator in the areas where there are orangutans. So I've known of occasions where they had to compensate the damage because of orangutans. So there are ways to find coexistence, but we all have to work together. So far, communities have a taboo, meaning they cannot kill orangutan. They cannot disturb orangutan. So we are quite fortunate that they are not of those who like kill orangutans for sport or for food lah. So we do work together. Orangutans also translate into, well, this was before pandemic. It brings source of income to the communities. So people come from all over the world to see the orangutans. So they know, the communities know that orangutans are very important in the area. So together with all this in mind, that's what we are doing at the moment. We're trying to come up with a long-term plan, 10 years, taking into account COVID-19 into the strategy. Because previously, all the strategy, the 10-year strategy has never happened, the pandemic. So we are going back to the drawing board and coming up with a long-term strategy to conserve orangutan, taking into account COVID-19.
All right. So there are two more questions, but this question I would like to open to both of our speakers because it's kind of general question. Probably both of you can share your opinion regarding these two questions. So the first question is, can the public without experience in animal conservation do their part-time job at the conservation center? Probably Mr. Joshua or Dr. Ridwan can start, give your opinion first. Which one?
Yeah, so volunteer-wise, again, I mentioned that unfortunately WCS is not a membership-based. We do organize volunteer program like beach cleanups. The one that on dolphin is one of the video from dolphin earlier that I showed is one of the effort that we try to raise awareness about marine conservation. Yes, so we do work with volunteer groups and fund work together. But WCS, we do take one or two interns, but very small scale, for specific activity, but not as in general, like going to the field with us now.
Okay. How about Dr. Ridwan?
Okay, I have a question. Just now we were talking about conservation and like breeding of our animals in the zoo and the possibility to release them back into the wild. Okay, we do have Bornean orangutan in our zoo. Can WCS help us, like, if we have surplus numbers of orangutans, do you guys study where is the best site for us to do releasing of them back into the wild? Is it possible?
Back to Sarawak, you mean, or
Yeah,
this
yeah.
one? Oh, it's a state policy lah, Dr. Ridwan. So it has to be discussed with the authorities,
Into
which is
government.
Sarawak Forestry Corporation at the moment. WCS again, we do research on orangutans in the wild. This one in relation to, in a way, free-ranging or semi-wild orangutans in Zoo Taiping that would have to be discussed between the government agency. But on our side, we do provide our input, the strategy that I mentioned earlier, the rehab and the reintroduction bits. So we do give our inputs on that.
And then one more thing, this is just a general question regarding orangutan breeding. Do you agree in terms of like people breeding orangutans and raising them up without their parents, like hand raising them? Is it a good practice?
At the moment, the orangutan island that I mentioned to you, I think it's at Tanjung Puting National Park, Central Kalimantan. They do rehab orangutan in a way that they need role models. So human mothers acting as their mother, because they need to be shown how to live, or even basic skill like makanan. You have to, like, okay, for example, today the keeper says ini makanan, put it there, tapi the baby orangutan doesn't recognize it as food, so he has to buka slowly. Okay, this is food. Okay, next time, no need for the keeper to bawa, put it on the table. The orangutans already know that those are food. So those skills, building nests, swinging from tree to tree, semua tu perlu take time lah to work out. Yeah. So yeah.
Because I've heard some places in Malaysia that actually they purposely, like every time the orangutan gives birth, after weaning period, they take it out and they just milk them in a nursery, and then they'll just increase the numbers back into the captivity area. But in my personal opinion, it's not really a good thing. But to you guys who work really with orangutan, do you think it's a good practice or not?
Yeah, personally, I would say that if in a way that you encourage them, encourage their wild behavior, and that's why, okay, coming back to the rehab and the reintroduction place, my opinion, doctor, bukan maybe not WCS, is they need to be rehabilitated where they will be reintroduced. So if they are transferred into an area where they are foreign, they don't know when is the fruiting season in that area, there's a higher chance that they won't survive in that new place.
Yes.
So where they are rehab should be where they will be reintroduced, so that they, after spending many years going to school, knowing the skills, knowing the fruiting seasons around the area, they are familiar and can survive. There are cases where over time, after more than 8 years, once they are independent, when they are released back into the wild, they do have that wild release into the wild. But again, maybe they are still familiar. They still depend on humans. I think it won't contribute back to their ecological function in the wild, doctor. So I agree to an extent to your opinion also.
I agree.
Thank you, Doc.
Okay, most welcome. Okay, that will be all from me. Thank you very much, Joshua.
Yep. I think there was a question about how can folks volunteer at Zoo Taiping, I think, by Intan earlier. For you, Doc?
Oh, I see. Volunteering programs actually is we've been done for years. Actually, we have people from all around the world, from Europeans, from all over the world coming to do volunteers here in the world. But the problem is now is the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, we actually stopped doing that. And some practical students also, we have been actually filtering them out. So it's an ongoing program, but as long as the pandemic is okay, it's under control, we can get volunteers to come in. We have a lot of volunteers that doesn't have any animal background. We have some volunteers that are actually vet students or animal science students or ecology students, forestry students. They come here and just to get more knowledge actually. So if you ask us, we do allow them to come, but not at this moment. It's not really safe.
Okay. Then the last question for both speaker. Is there any effective way to give early exposure to society, especially the young ones, about the wildlife extinction? Because it's possible that lack of exposure could lead them to not care the wildlife.
So you can do those things. Joshua, you can go first.
Yeah, so we do have programs well before COVID pandemic hari tu, whereby we actually have outdoor program for school kids, whether primary school or secondary school. I think it's mostly secondary school, whereby we actually because the senses of the kids nowadays focus on the eyes, where they look at all these digital punya devices. So we took out the eyesight sensors, blindfold them, jalan barefoot, and depend on your hearing, your sentuhan, your kaki, the sole of your feet. We brought them along a small stream, the jungle, well, safely lah, memang ada orang jaga, and then they go under a tree and things like that, blindfold. So they have to depend on the senses. So I think simple activity like that, we call it burung hantu lah. Now I remember, activity burung hantu. You just bring them along, take out the senses. It creates an unusual sense of awe in the kids lah. So it doesn't have to be like show you an animal going extinct. It's just as simple as going out and feel nature for themselves. They have to touch the sand, the grain of the sand, and then the waves under the feet. And then from having that sense of, wow, oh, this is nice, they would, one day when they grow up, hopefully, when they see the reverse of the situation where things are polluted, they want to do something about it. So that's our hope. Over to you, Doc.
All right, in terms of general giving thoughts or educating the minds of younger generations, you know, zoos' main role is really to educate the public, and our main target are the children, because the children are our generation of the future. So what we do is we provide them with very notice boards for them to read, but we know most Malaysians are lazy to read. So what we do is that we have some programs. Like last time before the pandemic, we have a lot of schools coming to zoos with package programs, like meaning that every 15 students will be accompanied by one ranger that will actually guide them throughout the whole zoo, explaining better than our notice boards, because notice boards are just reading up. So they will explain to them more on the things that they can experience in the zoo. And we do have some other activities like some quizzes, like coloring contests, and a lot of things that we do. But because of the pandemic, it really sucks because we can't really come to let school children come to our zoo and have the great experience that we had done before. So to me, because of this pandemic, one of the most important role of the zoo has been missing, which is the second one, which is educating the children. But with the pandemic and with people staying at home, we do have some live videos that we do on Facebook that people can actually like feeling that they are into the zoo, but they're watching it from the comfort zones in their homes. So that we have been doing since last year. So, and we know that yesterday we have another bad news that our country is going to bring another second lockdown. So I think our promotion team will start doing the same videos again so that some viewers at home can enjoy the zoo while having their own comfortable zone at home. One of the things that we do at the zoo.
Right. Thank you so much to Mr. Joshua and Dr. Ridwan for answering the questions. Okay. From the committee in the MS team, if you guys have any other questions, you can raise up. If not, then we can move to our next session. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Right. With that, we finally come to the end part of today's forum. As been pre-informed to all participants, there will be a quiz at 2:30 p.m. In order to access and take part in the quiz, we will send the invitation through your provided email. Please check your email and join the quiz session. For speakers and the collaborators, please stay back because we have our
No.
photo session after this. Um,
Good job.
we will end our YouTube live now. Thank you and have a good day and stay safe. So I pass this back to